For today, a shooting at a mall food court in Indiana Sunday evening. 4 people, including the shooter, are dead, and a bystander that's now being called a hero.
Texas state representatives released the Uvalde school shooting report, and the mayor lets out new body cam footage from a police officer inside the school. We take a look at what the investigation found.
The housing market is cooling. We spoke to an expert to find out what it means for you.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says his current focus is on championing the Republican Party during the midterm elections, and he says a 2024 presidential run may be in the cards. Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, and I'm Evelyn Lee. We are starting into another week. It's July 18th. But unfortunately, we are starting this Monday morning with another shooting. This time at a mall in Indiana. The incident Sunday leaves 4 people, including the shooter, dead. The gunman opened fire in the food court of the Greenwood Park Mall outside Indianapolis. Police say he was stopped by an armed bystander who shot and killed him. 2 other people were injured in the shooting. The gunman had a rifle and several magazines of ammunition. Police did not release the names of the victims, gunman, or bystander. Greenwood Mayor Mark Myers says on Facebook, the bystander is a good Samaritan for saving lives, and on behalf of the city of Greenwood is grateful for his quick action and heroism. Greenwood's police chief says the legally armed bystander is a 22-year-old man. He also says he's a real-life hero for stopping the gunman almost as soon as he began. And Texas state representatives on Sunday released their report of the investigation into the Uvalde school shooting. The report found poor leadership from law enforcement and a failure to follow active shooter training. It says responders failed to prioritize saving the lives of innocent victims over their own safety. The following footage may be disturbing to some viewers. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg reports.
Shots fired! Get inside! Go, go, go!
New body cam footage released by the Uvalde mayor shows the first moments of police arriving at Robb Elementary. After gunshots inside, police take cover.
Take cover, guys.
Following the initial urgency, police are seen milling around waiting. Children were still alive in the classroom at that time. State Representative Dustin Burrows, head of the committee, says the goal of the investigation was to provide a basis of facts so lawmakers can make policy changes in order to make schools safer.
That day, several officers in the hallway or in that building knew or should have known there was dying in that classroom, and they should have done more, acted with urgency.
The report found the gunman fired around 100 shots before police breached the classroom and killed the gunman over an hour later.
If we need a simple phrase to describe what the report says, again, I would tell you multiple systemic failures.
Officers in the investigation described the response as chaos and a cluster. The committee report says no one took control of the scene.
What are we doing here?
The active shooter policy in place designated School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo to be in command.
They were supposed to protect the innocents who now lie in their graves.
Arredondo testified that his approach and thinking was to respond as an officer. He says he thought of the shooter as cornered and barricaded and didn't know there were students in the room with the gunman. But body cam footage seems to show him contradicting that statement.
Sir, if you can hear me, please put your firearm down, sir. We don't want anybody else hurt.
He was also recorded saying they were clearing the rest of the building so they don't have any more except what's in there. A 911 call from a student stuck in the classroom is recorded on the body cam.
You have a child on the line.
The committee found the school failed to follow security protocols.
Despite a policy of locked doors, there was a regrettable culture of non-compliance. In fact, all 3 exterior doors to the building were unlocked that day, and multiple interior doors were not secured the day of the shooting.
The report found the shooter may have been sexually abused as a child, had no previous firearm experience, and was a former 4th grade student in the classroom he attacked. His former teacher testified the shooter claimed to have been bullied. The acting city police chief on the day of the shooting, Lieutenant Mariano Pargas, has now been placed on administrative leave. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The FAA is investigating a mid-air collision between two airplanes that left at least 4 people dead in Nevada Sunday. 2 planes collided over the North Las Vegas airport just after noon on Sunday. The National Transportation Safety Board is joining the FAA and North Las Vegas police in conducting the investigation. Police have not released the names of the victims, their ages, nor the cause of the crash.
And in the housing market, no more bidding wars. Home sales are starting to cool. In fact, last month, 60,000 home buyers canceled their deals. Redfin says the Bay Area is cooling down especially fast. San Jose is on top of the list, followed by Oakland. Stockton and San Francisco also made the top 10. And we're bringing in Jonathan Miller to discuss the housing market. He's the CEO of Miller Samuel Inc. That's a real estate appraisal and consulting firm. It's great to have you, Jonathan.
Great to be here.
I want to ask you for some context first. So Redfin found that across the U.S., around 60,000 home buyers canceled their deals. So how can we understand these numbers? Why was this the case?
I think the biggest reason is we have a tremendous amount of uncertainty. Mortgage rates have spiked since the Fed began pushing rates up. So, for example, at the end of December to now, mortgage rates, the cost of buying a home for many people has nearly doubled.
And based on what you just say, as a buyer, that probably raises a question, should I back out as well? Is that the smarter thing to do? What do you recommend right now for buyers?
Well, I think every situation is different. What you have right now is a lending or a mortgage lending environment that's very conservative and has been all through the COVID housing boom that we've just gone through. But what consumers are finding is, if all of a sudden the mortgage is going to cost a lot, the payments are going to be much higher than they had budgeted, they're backing out, or they're worried that with all the uncertainty right now, we have inflation, we have the war in Ukraine, we have a lot of volatility in the financial markets, and some people, it's just enough to get them to say, hey, I want to pull back and think about this before I move on. And this is not uncommon when a housing market begins to soften or weaken.
And I mean, why is that the case that markets are cooling down? I mean, or let me ask differently, why is it that some markets like the Bay Area, it seems they're cooling down quickly, and then there's places like New York City that seem like they're reaching record highs?
Right. So what you have is sort of a timing difference. New York City on the purchase market is starting to slow down, but is behind. So, for example, the Bay Area, simply because the housing boom here started later. New York City was seen as the sort of global hotspot for COVID when it first started. And really until early 2021, unlike the Bay Area and much of the U.S., the housing market in New York really didn't start until vaccine adoption became widespread and the city was deemed safe to go to. And as a result, it was about 9 months behind everybody else, and you're seeing that now.
And I know you just touched on your recommendation for buyers, but let's say in those areas like the Bay Area, what would you advise? What is your advice to sellers?
Well, I think the first thing is the seller has to recognize that almost overnight, the buying power of the people that would be interested in their home has been cut in half or substantially, depending case by case. And so they have to be realistic. The market doesn't care what they want for their house in terms of what they want to sell for. It's what the buyers can afford or support. And what we're definitely seeing is a pullback of buyers, which means the sellers that are going to win are the ones that are going to be reacting quicker to changing conditions than their neighbors, and because this is a very quickly changing condition.
Very interesting insights today. Thank you so much, Jonathan Miller, Miller Samuel Inc.
My pleasure.
So a lot of things to consider right now. And for buyers, Next Advisor also has some tips on getting a good deal. One of them is to just do your due diligence, compare mortgage lenders. But they also say to build your credit score, make use of first-time buyer programs if you can, and consider ARM or adjustable rate loans.
President Biden returned from his trip to the Middle East on Saturday night. During his visit, he presented his vision and strategy for America's engagement in the region. It includes the hope to lay groundwork for a regional security alliance, which includes Israel, to combat Iranian threats.
President Joe Biden told Arab leaders on Saturday that the United States would remain an active partner in the Middle East, but he failed to secure commitments to a regional security axis that would include Israel or an immediate oil output rise.
The United States is invested in building a positive future in the region in partnership with all of you, and the United States is not going anywhere.
Biden, who began his first trip to the Middle East as president with a visit to Israel, presented his vision and strategy for America's engagement in the region at an Arab summit in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with 6 Gulf states and Egypt, Jordan, and Iraq. The vision included the hope to lay the groundwork for a regional security alliance, including Israel, to combat Iranian threats.
There is no discussion about a GCC-Israeli defense alliance or anything of this sort. The preferred course as regards Iran's nuclear program is, of course, dialogue and a diplomatic solution.
During a meeting Friday with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, also known as MBS, Biden raised the highly sensitive issue of human rights and the 2018 murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, for which Biden said he holds the Crown Prince responsible. MBS denies the allegation. Biden had said he would make Saudi Arabia a pariah on the global stage over the killing by Saudi agents, but ultimately decided that the U.S. needs the help of the OPEC giant at a time of high crude prices and other problems related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Biden sought to reach a deal on oil to drive down gasoline prices, but leaves the region empty-handed, hoping the OPEC Plus group, which includes Saudi Arabia, Russia, and other major oil producers, will boost production at a meeting on August 3rd.
The former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has been working hard endorsing candidates for the Republican Party. The midterm elections are around the corner, but he also has his eye on 2024. In an interview with the Times UK, Mike Pompeo indicated a potential bid for president and said Trump's candidacy won't affect his decision. Pompeo says he is fit to be in that position, but will make his decision after November's election. He also says he will give his full support to Trump if he wins the nomination. Pompeo has launched a political action committee aimed at supporting conservatives called CAVPAC, Champion American Values PAC. He's been traveling across the country raising money for Republican candidates in the midterm elections. Pompeo posted a video on Twitter advertising CAVPAC, which defended the right to pray. Pompeo says in the video, prayer isn't just words or actions, but the thing that makes us, lifts us, and inspires us.
It appears that this is a theme for Pompeo and CAVPAC. He says unless Americans act now to assert faith and morality, the nation cannot and will not be strong. That was at a speech Pompeo gave at the Reagan Foundation and Institute. And coming up, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy fires the heads of 2 government security agencies. Dozens of officials in the agencies were found to be collaborating with Russia. And a cargo plane crashed Saturday in northern Greece. The Ukrainian plane was carrying dangerous materials, mostly explosives. Find out more after this short break.
NTD's Capital Report. It's about getting answers, cutting through the fog of politics. It's about your questions and our chances to ask.
What is the net impact of the American? Congressman Graves, thank you for joining us.
We're speaking to those in power to find out what does this mean for the people. We're here so you are in the know.
At The Nation Speaks, we don't just scratch the surface. We want to go wide and deep. Our viewers come away with a much richer understanding of the issues of the day. We really make a big effort to bring on different voices onto the show. We don't just talk to experts and newsmakers, which of course are extremely important, but we also want to hear from the American people. So the people who are impacted by the policies and issues that we're talking about, because what they have to say is just as important to the national conversation.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy fired the country's top state prosecutor and security chief on Sunday. The firings are easily Ukraine's biggest political terminations since Russia invaded in February. NTD's Kostemenes has this report.
The firings of Ukraine's security agency SBU chief Ivan Bakanov and Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova were announced in executive orders on the president's website. Zelenskyy says he fired the top officials because members of their agencies collaborated with Russia. With over 650 open cases of alleged treason and collaboration against prosecutorial and law enforcement officials, Zelenskyy says more than 60 officials from Bakanov and Venediktova's agencies were working against Ukraine in Russian-occupied territories. The Ukrainian president says he fired the top security official at the start of the invasion, a decision he now feels was justified. Bakanov was appointed to head the SBU in 2019. Zelenskyy appointed Oleksiy Simonenko as the new prosecutor general in a separate executive order that was also published on the president's site. Kostemenes, NTD News.
A cargo plane crashed near the village of Paleohora in northern Greece late on Saturday. The plane had 8 people on board. Video shows the wreckage of the plane scattered across what appears to be a cornfield with mangled parts of the plane still smoking. Residents report seeing a fireball and hearing explosions for 2 hours after the crash. Local media reported that the aircraft was an Antonov AN-12 owned by a Ukrainian company. It was carrying 12 tons of dangerous materials, mostly explosives. The pilot requested an emergency landing due to an engine problem, but the aircraft's signal was lost. Greek civil aviation authorities say the flight was heading from Serbia to Jordan.
And a Munich brew pub found a novel way to beat Europe's cooking oil shortages. They let customers pay for their beer with sunflower oil to ensure plentiful stocks for frying schnitzels.
Ukraine and Russia account for about 80% of global exports of sunflower seed oil, so supplies have dwindled in many European countries because of the conflict. Bottles of rapeseed and sunflower oil have become more scarce on German supermarket shelves, and many shops ration the number of bottles per customer. Eric Hoffman is the manager of Munich's Gysinger brewery.
Getting oil is very difficult for the reason that we do it in the supermarket with every private customer. There, you can only get it rationed and in smaller quantities. And if you need 30 litres a week and only get 15 instead, at some point you won't be able to fry a schnitzel any longer.
To compensate for this shortage, the brewery is offering beer lovers a litre of their favourite brew for the same quantity of sunflower oil. While a litre of beer costs about $7 in German pubs, a 1 litre bottle of sunflower oil retails for about $4.50, making the offer tempting for many customers.
The customers are very satisfied with it. They are helped and we are helped. They are happy to help us. We are happy about every litre of oil. 10 minutes ago, someone from Ukraine arrived with a fresh 80 litres and had it exchanged for beer. So we are happy and satisfied.
Such creativity. And back in aviation, Saudi Arabia announced it would open its airspace to Israeli planes, saving Israeli airlines on fuel and flight time. Israel can now overfly Saudi territory to reach Asia, and the decision will cut around 2.5 hours of flights from Israel to Thailand and India. Before, Israel was only allowed to fly over the airspace for flights to the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. An official from El Al Israel Airlines said saving on fuel will allow the airline to use a smaller plane to Mumbai. There are also plans to use the bigger planes for other places like Australia and Japan. And after the break, a New Zealand photographer and musician discovered a way to place the viewer inside musical instruments. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
American Brooke Anderson has taken gold in the Hammerthrow World Championship. Anderson threw 259 feet, beating second-place Canadian Cameron Rogers by almost 11.5 feet. This was the first time since 2011 that Poland hasn't won a women's hammer throw at the World Championship. The United States reigning champion was also out with COVID-19 complications, leaving room for an Anderson victory. American Janae Casanavoid finished third.
And a cellist from New Zealand is taking amazing photographs inside musical instruments. He wants to show people how years of concerts leave their mark on them. These instruments contain the history, joys, and frustration of many artists.
I love anything kind of visual stuff that makes you think.
Charles Brooks started playing music at 11 and taking photos at 14, and he loves both. He became a concert cellist and played with orchestras in Brazil, Chile, and China for 20 years. These exotic places inspired him to take photographs of landscapes and other musicians. Then the pandemic hit with long lockdowns and social distancing.
When people were unavailable, it's like, right, what else can this camera see that's sort of beyond my vision? And so I naturally turned towards the classical musical instruments that are around me. There were new technologies, new lenses coming out, and for the first time there were these sort of probe lenses available to the public. So I picked one of them up and found my way inside some instruments, and that was the beginning of this whole rather extraordinary journey.
Charles wanted to show the inside of a musical instrument in great detail, but that's not an easy task. He had to take nearly 1,000 pictures for one single image.
Sometimes between 100 and 1,000 photographs go into any one shot. And this is because once the lens is inside the instrument, it's very, very dark. We can't put too much light into the instruments because the lights get hot and can actually damage the outside of the instrument. And that means that you've only got a tiny sliver of what you're looking at in focus, sometimes just 2 or 3 millimeters. I'm taking a shot, moving the focus, taking a shot, moving the focus, and repeating this process for a long time, then running it through some special software that just combines all of the in-focus bits and throws away all the blurry parts. Now when you're presented with something that's very small but everything is sharp all the way from the front right as far as the eye can see, your brain sort of assumes that, well, this can't be tiny, it must be large. It's an optical illusion.
He photographed the inside of violins, pianos, cellos, flutes, saxophones, and clarinets. This placed the viewer directly inside the music.
Whenever I'm looking at these, it almost feels as if the instrument has become its own sort of concert hall. You can imagine all that sound reverberating through there and imagine yourself standing in it.
Brooks approaches these instruments with great reverence and considers them an extension of the musician himself.
There was one particular cello by an unknown maker that was once hit by a train. You can see all of these repairs going through the instrument, and for some reason the various luthiers involved started to sign their work on this particular cello, and that's very unusual.
He hopes to continue to find new things that the camera can see and people can't. He wants to give the viewer fresh experiences that open the mind and add a new perspective to things.
You know, those really are some amazing pictures of the instruments. And I used to play flute, so I can actually recognize that one.
Oh, really? Okay, good, because there was some that I couldn't quite recognize, but most of them, yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, great idea. And great to see them from this angle. It's fascinating for me how these acoustic instruments actually produce sound.
Yeah, it is a brilliant idea. And you know what else is brilliant? Our next story. A 300-year-old winery with a secret weapon in the war against pests, an army of ducks. Outside Cape Town, a South African winery has its ducks in a row, literally. The Vineyard's owner says it's a creative way to provide organic pest control. The ducks eat aphids, snails, and worms that might threaten grape production. While the winemakers do confess to eating duck eggs, duck itself is never on the menu. As one explains, quote, "That would be like eating a colleague."
Yes, please do not eat your colleagues. That'd be so rude. But nice idea to keep the grapes pesticide-free.
Yeah, that's a pretty novel idea. You know, I've seen these little catchers that catch beetles to keep them out of the blueberries.
Oh, that's a good one too, but just less cute, I guess. That's all for today's program. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.